Good morning, CLC family. I invite you now, in this moment, to take this opportunity to just love yourself just the way you are. If you feel so inclined, go ahead and take a nice, deep, cleansing breath in, breathing in the cool, calming oxygen that surrounds you. And as you release the breath, release all that no longer serves you. Allow any doubts or stress or tension from the past or future to just wash away right now. And if you feel so inclined, go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath in, breathing in love, breathing in light, breathing in life. And as you release this breath, allow your body to relax in this moment and allow your mind to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself up to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and receptive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words: I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one very special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. Visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release. Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This can be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in this room or on this planet anymore. I turn to that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in this room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude in saying, I'm grateful for the good in your lives.
This is Rufus Jones. Took a while to find these for you, but we'll have them in next week in the bookstore if you're interested. Rufus Jones, The Essential Writings. Now that's kind of brutal. This guy wrote 19 books, and these are the essential writings. So, I mean, somebody really wanted to package this in a neat and tidy little way. He is well worth reading, his whole body of work. And he was a Quaker, as I mentioned to you, and one of the founders of the American Friends Service Committee, which won a Nobel Peace Prize for their work in Europe following the Second World War. The Quakers have a long history of social activism and incredible work and compassion in the world. He writes about that, and he writes metaphysics in a way that's refreshing because he doesn't come out of the New Thought school. You know, when you read religious science and you read Unity and so on, a lot of these people read each other. Maybe they knew each other, studied with each other, and so you can kind of get into a almost hypnotic rhythm in the writing when you read somebody who comes from a different tradition altogether and they come to the same conclusions. It's really quite interesting. Another person that we'll talk about in the new year is Masaharu Taniguchi, the founder of the Sechonoye movement, and how he came to this in pre-World War II Japan is fascinating. You remember we talked about there are 4 kinds of religion, and one of them is natural. There's natural, revealed, syncretic, and derived. These are the four basic categories into which organized religion sorts itself. And natural religion is the type of religion where you observe the world and you notice patterns in, well, nature, in how things unfold. And based on those patterns that you notice, you develop a predictive theology. You begin to expect things to happen in a certain way. You ascribe certain characteristics to the deity and to the way that it unfolds through its creation. So what Taniguchi did, and Rufus Jones and others, is not coming through a prescribed body of thought in an already existing teaching. They looked at life. They looked at life and they said, when I do this, that happens. There's a cause-effect relationship. There's a cause-effect relationship between, well, what I think about and what I bring about. There is a correlation there. Is it precise? Is it exact? Is it 100% of the time? No. But it's more often than not. There's an attitude of expectancy that I can develop in my life where life begins to tailor itself to that expectancy. Incoming information begins to look more or less and feel especially more or less like what I expect it to feel like. So observing creation, you see certain patterns unfold. When you observe your own life, you see certain patterns unfold. When I've gone through big changes in my life, where was I mentally and emotionally? What was I thinking about? What was I dwelling on? What was my process at that time? When change occurred that I thought was sudden and unexpected, came out of nowhere, was there really something happening behind the scenes of a creative nature that I perhaps had ignored? And so on. You look at these things and you begin to see I'm a whole lot more involved in my life than I thought I was. See, a lot of times we've come to believe that we just react to stuff. Things happen and we react to it, and that we should have noble and gracious reactions to things. That makes us a better person. There's a whole lot more going on than that. We don't just react, we proact. We proact in life. We act on life. We act on life, and life begins to adapt itself to us because we find the whole thing from beginning to end is subjective. To use Ernest Holmes, one of his favorite terms, it's subjective. We go over this all the time, but I got to bring you there again. You ask yourself, are you having a good day? Jeffrey just asked me if I had a good week. Jeffrey just asked me if isn't that what you said? Or how was my week? I guess it was how was my week, you know. And well, there's no short answer to that. I mean, first of all, it was 7 days long. That week was 7 days long. And from morning till night, something was happening. And I was there for it. Even in sleep, even in a dream state, there was stuff going on. Because I'm one of these people who dreams in their sleep. Not everyone says they do. Whatever, you know. Then I got up and I had stuff to do. How did I feel about it? That's the question. Did I have a good week? You can't just list activities and events and have it describe that. It's all about the subjective thought atmosphere. This is why people can go through big changes and come out happy. People can be scared and happy, nervous and happy, uncertain of things and happy. Why? Because the particular unique quality of their consciousness is such. They've woven together certain strands of thought in such a way as that that's how it presents them in the world. And we can, by the reverse token, go through experiences of relative bliss, ease, calm, success, prosperity, well-being, whatever you want to call it, and be anxious and have this kind of cloud hanging over us. It's all subjective. So we look at the feeling nature. We look at how we're managing incoming information in a certain way. So what I wanted to get to today is what he has to say, he being Rufus Jones, about duality. He says there is no necessary duality. And then he goes on to explain why we might think there was necessary duality. For one thing, we've been schooled to think this. And he takes us on a little journey through Western organized religion, which posits the existence of a good power called God and an evil power called Satan or the devil or whatever, its minions of doom, you know, and how these two powers are fighting over you. They're fighting over each one of us. Like in the cartoon, Good Goofy and Bad, you remember Good Goofy and Bad Goofy? Anybody else remember that? Sit on the shoulders, it's a Mickey Mouse or something, you know, and Bad Goofy has the horns and Good Goofy has the halo, and they're whispering advice in each ear, you know. And so there's a school of thought in Western theology of absolute duality, where these two energies of good and evil, light and dark, up and down, what have you, are combating with each other on you, on your soul. That's their turf. That's their battleground, is your soul. And furthermore, this battle will never end. No matter what you do, no matter how well you work things out, it's going to continue. This is just how life is set up to operate. Now, it's a pretty dismal school of thought, but it's out there. And some of us are pretty familiar with it, you know. Then there's a school of thought which says, well, it's sort of like that, except it isn't permanent. It eventually is it's going to get better. It's going to fix itself. But right now, where you are, there is this absolute duality that you have to contend with. And may you make the right decisions. And it reminds me of, I cannot remember the comedian who wrote this or said this, but it reminds me of this line I heard a long time ago. It says, we stand, Danielle's head just snapped up because she's going to find it for you, see. We stand at a crossroads. In one direction lies absolute ruin. In the other direction lies utter calamity. We must choose wisely. Think about that a moment, right? Yeah. Woody Allen. Woody Allen. You win the prize today. Woody Allen said that. So we're faced then, in this situation, we're faced with this bleak possibility of things might improve. We all long for a better world. It's kind of a long shot. And a line that many of us have heard, so we'll say, well, not in my lifetime, but perhaps in my children's or my grandchildren's, this cosmic battle of good and evil will play itself out. Then there's another path. And this is the one he advocates, and this is the one that I advocate, the one that this teaching advocates. Is that not only is there not a cosmic battle between good and evil going on, whether permanently or temporarily, all there is, in place of dualism, is a new word, monism, M-O-N-I-S-M, from the monad, the one. All there is one whole system. And I got a letter the other day to my magazine column asking me, is that system good? Is God good? Is God all good? And I needed more room than I had to reply, so I had to cut it back quite a bit. But the short answer I gave was no. God isn't good. God is. God is. Because God contains all potential subjective reality. Is everything good? Do you think so? Is everything pleasant? Is everything wise? Is everything... No, some of it's awful. But it belongs. It belongs within the one whole system. So if it's awful and it belongs in the one whole system, or it's heavenly and it belongs in the one whole system, then what can you say about the one whole system? Nothing categorically judgmental. All you can say is, it is one whole system. And it contains everything. And the good news about that is because there is one system that contains everything, everything is fixable. Because it exists in the same place with its own remedy. Every problem exists within the same system as its answer. So we look at the world and we say, well, look at all these terrible problems. Have you ever seen, there's another wonderful song, Todd Rundgren, about it. Look at the world. Did you ever see so much misery? And he said, well, why would I bring that up? He says, we're only human. We're only human, trying to get by, trying to figure it out, trying to be kind to one another. And in that is the redemption. So we're seeking to improve the contents of a system that intrinsically is whole. And another term for whole is perfect. This system is wholly perfect, wholly in both senses and spellings of the term. Yet again, it contains the possibility for upset. So everything being contained within this one whole system means it's addressable in terms of this whole system. Meaning you don't have to go outside the system, you don't have to go find another system in order to work on the contents of this one, which is good because there isn't any other system if it's all there is, you see. So it all exists in this one whole space, and everything is its own potential healing. Now, how that's useful and what I want to propose to all of us for daily living, because we want to make this practical, you know, as we go about our days in the world, is to look at apparent opposites and reconcile them, or permit them to be reconciled. If you can't manage that yourself, permit them to be reconciled back into their natural state of wholeness. And we've spoken about this many times, and some of those times recently. Is to look at apparent opposites, but not just the obvious opposites that exist. See, we think of like good and evil. We think of like lack and prosperity. We think of objective looking pairs of opposites that have a distinct quality in life. But let's get a little more subtle. Let's get a little more, look between the lines a little bit here. How about the distance that exists between you and who you want to be? Now imagine that no such distance exists at all, but the you that you want to be exists at the same place as the you that's working on you. Also the you that you used to be, because sometimes we romanticize that. We say, well, when I was young, I was fearless. When I was young, I had it all going on. And now, you know, the years have passed. You're going to hear a song about that in a little bit. And so we create a space there. We create an interval between these two experiences that doesn't necessarily need to exist. What about if everything that you're working on is to reveal to you that the place you want to arrive at, you never left? And that it's about, as the poet said, Eliot, it's about circling back to the place whence you came and recognizing it for the first time. To realize, I've always been. We got a Bible class starting up soon, and in there we're going to consider parables after a few weeks in, you know. And one of those parables, perhaps the largest parable that Jesus ever spoke, is the parable of the prodigal son. The message of the story of the prodigal son is, you know, he comes home. I won't take you through the whole thing, chapter and verse now, but he comes home to his father. Who do you suppose his father is? God, right? So it's every person comes home to God after a time in a far country with riotous living, which sounds fun. It's great, you know, but he's strung out from trying to live on his own energies, sort of unplugged from God. He comes back to God. God welcomes him in. It's like you never left, because he never did. Because if there's one whole system, that includes the far country with the riotous living, which is just one way of doing things. So we look at opposites and we seek to reconcile them. And this is sort of maintenance mysticism. And this is what Rufus Jones talks about. He says there's negation mysticism and affirmation mysticism. Negation mysticism means you look at apparent division and you say not two, only one. Not two, only one. Affirmation mysticism says you look at life from the position of oneness. You don't even begin with the duality. You don't have to reconcile the duality. You just have trained yourself in the moment to recognize the oneness. Now here's the thing. We're all good at some of this. Not so practiced at other parts of it. That's our journey right there, is to figure this out, where we stand on the continuum, how we apply all of this. There are some things that you know about the beauty and wonder of life that other people want to know for themselves, and they're going to get there through you. You're going to remind them of certain things because of your strength of character, depth of wisdom, and so on. And there are other things that you're not so good at that other people are going to point out to you, and only you know what these things are. And you see how how it develops. There used to be a column in Science of Mind magazine back in the day, and I think this column was called I Refuse the Verdict, or I may have my columns mixed up. They did have one called I Refuse the Verdict, and I think it applies to what I'm about to tell you, but if it didn't, you can find it, or I'll find it for you or something. But they had these, and it was creative writing. It was great fun, okay? It wasn't somebody up there saying, well, now here's how spiritual principle works and the subconscious mind and blah, blah, blah. No, it was a guy's coming home from work, and he gets on the train. This was a long time ago. So it was guys that went to work and they got on trains to come home, which they still do in some parts of the country. But anyway, and this guy sits down on the train or the subway or whatever, and he starts talking to the person next to him. He says, I hate my boss. I have this miserable job. My boss doesn't respect me, and they don't pay me enough. And I wish I could quit, but I can't because of marriage. And he says, to this total stranger. That still happens. And the stranger turns to him and says, have you ever considered that your words have power? Have you ever considered that maybe there's, and starts going into this very gentle metaphysics lesson and makes it not an attack, but makes it about themselves. They say, well, I used to hate my job too, says this second person. But what I realized was blah, 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 blah. So they identify and they tell you this is what you should do. This is a good way to bridge the gap. So you don't make the other person like a specimen in a jar. Whoa, that's weird how you're thinking. No, I've been there. And here's what I did to get out of that. And you could carry this around with you in these magazines, and next time you're on a train and somebody plops down next to you and they go off about their miserable life, you'd have a script. Would work at the airport too. Well, it went to show, and I found they're delightfully well written too, and a little corny, but hey. But the thing it was driving at was that what is it going to take for you to be a spiritual teacher? You're already that. There are people who look to you for advice and counsel. There are people who look to you for strength of consciousness. And there are people that you look to. And none of that is to be pathologized. None of that is wrong. There's not going to come a time when you have all the answers for everybody. There's not going to come a time when nobody has any answers for you. That's the part of this system that is ubiquitous and is eternal, is that we're always going to be exchanging information back and forth. And to let that be all right, to be the teacher part of the time and the student part of the time, and you're not sure exactly which the rest of the time, absolutely wonderful. It's all going on here and now. When I read Ernest Holmes talking about immortality for the first time a long time ago, it really confused me because I thought he was talking about life after death. And when he said, well, the soul is eternal and it goes, okay, I can buy that. I think most people want to, But he wasn't talking about just that. He said, right now you're immortal. Right now there is no time for you. Right now there is no space for you. Right now there is no container for you that has anything looking like walls. All there is this one whole system that is absolutely, by God, infinite. It is absolutely everywhere. And that means everything you encounter, every other person that you ever meet, every thought that runs through your mind, every sensation you could possibly have, and on, issues from the same mind with a capital M. That is the mind that you and I use every time we think. Every time we think. So the challenge put forward to us, how we got here, is beside the point. What information was shared with us that we took wrongly or was put across wrongly or what, it doesn't matter. We've come to believe that there are two systems at work here, or 3 or 20, and our challenge is to see, as Scripture talks about again, with the single eye. Let thine eye be single, and the whole body shall be full of light. In other words, you see only the presence of spirit containing absolutely everything. And everyone and every situation that you run across either knows that or is about to. Either knows that or is on the road to, is about to turn the corner into that. And you and I may help facilitate that by the very next conversation that we have with ourselves in the mirror, with the people we love, or with the stranger on the train. Let's know together there is one life, one power, one presence, just one. We're not asking it to do anything spectacular beyond what it's already doing. We have no long list of needs that we present here. We're affirming and knowing instead the I am, that is enough. We're affirming and knowing this within ourselves and within every sentient being. In fact, within all life, including the chair we're sitting in and the earth it is placed on and the clouds overhead and everything, everywhere. All of it moving to a celestial rhythm, to a tune of some kind, the music of the spheres, all of it falling together even when sometimes it appears to be falling apart. This one life is already so, and minute by minute I come into a greater awareness of it, a greater appreciation of it. Makes my heart open with compassion. Makes ideas flow to and through me. Causes all things to reveal themselves in wonder for this knowing and its manifestation in form. Everywhere I turn, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it done. And so it is. Now, before I exit the stage, we're going to do a little music here. I got one quick more story I want to tell you. It deserves to stand alone and not part of the talk and not be worked into some kind of teaching material, but a great, great soul left our planet this week. A man who, raised in the South, is abandoned by his father, moved to live with his grandparents in Michigan, and the trauma of this experience as a little kid caused him to develop a severe speech impediment, a stutter. So some of you are nodding, or you know where I'm going with this. A speech impediment so severe it held him back in school. He went on to work through that, to become a stage actor, to become a narrator, to become the voice that you can hear in your mind when you think of a voice, to become one of the great Shakespearean actors of the age. And in his honor, we're going to do a little Shakespeare next month. He first performed on the stage in New York at the Court Theater, C-O-R-T. That's what it was called when I was a kid. In 2012, they renamed it in his name. Can you imagine this? To go from where he came from to having the James Earl Jones Theater named in your honor. All thanks and all praise to him. And one more time we hear, is there anything we can't do? Is there anyone we can't be? So, God bless James Earl Jones. We'll meet you soon and hang out together.
So if you summarize your past week in one moment, does that become a week moment? No. Coming up, we got our soul session on Wednesday. Every other month, I think most of you know, we have a soul session. We bring on a guest, and Reverend Jesse usually interviews them. And this month, it's going to be Reverend Eamon Duffy, and he's in charge of really men's interests, but he's promoting masculinity in a positive sense. He was actually in ministerial school with Reverend Lisa and myself, and I was just looking at the weekly email before, and his picture's here, and Barbara said, "Oh, he's cute." So maybe that's an incentive for all of you women out there to actually come to the soul session this Wednesday for no other reason than to see Eamon Duffy, because, as Barbara says, he's cute. But seriously, it's really a worthwhile exercise. He's doing a phenomenal job to promote positive masculinity in the world. So as we come up to giving time, I just want to say once again, we're very grateful for all the assistance you give us, whether it's in person here, it's your money, your time, it's all good, because it helps us get a positive message out to the world, which is really important. So as we come up to giving time, I invite you to either physically or mentally take your gift in your hand and say with me, "Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is."
And then I'm going to tell you why I'm a little blary-eyed and taking direction from not the front row, but the third row, which I appreciate. I don't run away from home very often, but I do occasionally, and that word home is kind of a weird one for me because I'm a military brat. The place I was born, I only lived for 3 months, and I don't have a place that I call home, per se. Like, there is no house for me to go back to that I grew up in, because I've been around a lot. But I went home last week to the closest place that I can say is home. My family is from Kentucky. And so I went home, one, to see family. I did go spend some time with my dad, which was wonderful. But I also learned a lot about the place that I call home. And it was really hard to come back because Kentucky is beautiful. And the leaves had started to change while I was there. But you guys are also my home. Home isn't necessarily a place. It is also people. It is the community that reminds you who you are, or who you want to be, or both at the same time. So you guys are my home. So I'm happy to be back. But I may run away again in the not too distant future, because, oh my God, Kentucky was beautiful. All right. But in that knowing, in that idea of home, I invite you into the one home that we all have, which is spirit. I invite you to consciously step into the sacred. As Terry says, you know, it's always a holy moment. But it is our consciousness that allows us to recognize that. So I invite you to consciously step into the sacred with me. And know that there is one life, one power, one presence, one love. And that we get to be that presence for each other. That we get to live that life and live it to the fullest. That we get to be channels for that power and that love. And that when we recognize ourselves as channels of that love, amazing things happen. So I invite you home in all the levels of that meaning. Into the community, into the house, into the family, into all of the families, both blood and choice, that cause our soul to take flight. And to recognize that who you are and who you want to be aren't that far apart when you know where home is. And so I'm knowing as we go forth into this week because I had a fabulous week last week, and I expect that this week will also be fabulous. Because I'm going to walk home with every breath I take. And I invite each and every one of you to take my hand and walk home with me. And I know this with all of the gratitude in my being. I am grateful for a teaching that reminds us who we are. I am grateful for a community that comes together to do the same thing. I am grateful for our musicians, our practitioners, our ministers. I am grateful for the technology that allows us to send this out to members all over the country, if not the world. I am grateful for each and every one of you, for the brilliant lights, the divine expressions that you are. And I am grateful because it's just another word for love. And I relax, and I release my word with love into the law, knowing that it is done. And so it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my
I feel it
body.
in my mind.
I feel it in my
I feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose
I
it.
trust it.
I trust it.
I use it.
I use
and
it.
I love it.
And I love
And
it.
so it is.
And so it is.